Turkish troops have begun invading northern Syria after a heavy bombardment of Kurdish towns. Turkey has confirmed that its ground forces are on the move after launching an aerial attack overnight. It comes after the abrupt US pullout from the area. The Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces say 3 of their fighters and 5 civilians have been killed so far, with dozens injured. Here's Middle East correspondent Eric Torchek.
Turkish troops, as well as the Syrian National Army, that's a Syrian opposition group that used to be called the Free Syrian Army, that was until 2017 also supported by the United States but is now armed and backed by Turkey. And Kurdish forces actually accuse members of that group of being former members of groups aligned to Al-Qaeda and even perhaps to Islamic State. Some of the allegations Turkey denies. But those are the forces that are moving into those Kurdish-held towns in northeastern Syria at the moment, after the softening up of those areas by artillery and airstrikes. You've seen the impact on civilians, and that's been part of the main reason for the international condemnation of Turkey's offensive. But now that we're seeing ground forces move in, things are likely to get much worse. Internationally, a number of groups such as the European Union, the humanitarian groups, the United Nations, all of them have expressed concern about the broad humanitarian impacts of Turkey's move. There's a big fear about the number of refugees that are and internally displaced people that are going to be forced to move away from the border area to avoid Turkey's operations. President Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey, he put out a statement earlier when he said that the operation had begun, saying it was called Operation Peace Spring, and that its objective was to bring peace to the region and secure it so that refugees could return. He also promised in a later video that he released that civilians would not be targeted, but that's something that Kurdish forces say has already occurred, with the SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces, saying that 5 civilians had been killed and dozens more wounded in the Turkish bombardment. The big fear also is that the Islamic State, which is the terrorist group that the Kurdish forces managed to effectively defeat territorially, at least in Syria in March, could use this as an opportunity to re-emerge and perhaps re-establish some control over parts of territory in Syria.
Eric Torchek reporting there, and the US President Donald Trump has defended his decision to withdraw troops from northern Syria. North America correspondent James Glenday says some of the president's most loyal supporters are questioning Mr. Trump's move.
It's one of the rare issues that has united members of the Republican and Democratic parties, including a couple of Donald Trump's close allies. Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham, who's been a very vocal supporter of the president throughout this impeachment inquiry getting underway here, said he was very disappointed with the decision to withdraw troops. He said it wasn't too late to reverse course, and he even was mulling the idea of sanctions, and that is something that looks likely that Congress might push ahead with. The other thing was the president himself held a press conference not that long ago, and he faced a series of questions about whether or not he was walking away from America's allies and what assurances he'd actually got from the Turkish president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And here's a little of what he had to say when he was asked what he would do if Turkey tried to wipe out the Kurdish forces.
I will wipe out his economy if that happens. I've already done it once with Pastor Brunson. I'm sure that I hope that he will act rationally. But I will tell you that I do agree on sanctions, but I actually think much tougher than sanctions if he doesn't do it in as humane a way as possible.
Donald Trump's hands could be tied somewhat if Congress goes down this path, because there is considerable alarm, as I said, even among some of the president's supporters, that this sends a message to America's allies elsewhere in the world that maybe they will not always have the United States backing, and that really does have some people here in DC concerned.